Hello, it's Amber here from LoveFit, and it is week 32 of my pregnancy fitness video diaries. So yes, welcome to a Healthy Happy Pregnancy series. And today I am going to be trying to bust the myth that pregnancy and birth are going to ruin you, basically. I have to say that it really saddens me that so many people have the opinion and the attitude that, pregnancy is going to be horrible and you're going to have 9 months of feeling sick and nauseous and have lots of aches and pains and weird cravings and be terribly hormonal and moody or upset or whatever, and that birth is going to be the most horrific experience you'll ever undergo, and isn't it a horrible negative thing, but hey, at least you get the baby at the end of it, and that afterwards your body is so completely ruined, and hey ho, oh I laugh a little bit and I pee and I sneeze and I pee and never mind, that's what happens, and kind of laugh it off. And I just think it's really hard to get this across, because I know some people watching this who have had kids are going to be thinking, well, Amber, you actually haven't done it yet. You might have had 7.5 months of pregnancy, but you haven't gone through birth yet, and you don't know how it's going to be. And I get that. And I am making this as a public announcement because I know this will be aired before I do give birth, unless something happens very prematurely. But I will promise to report back afterwards and talk you through my birth experience for those who want to hear it. I appreciate not everybody will. But yeah, I just think by the same token, people always said, oh, pregnancy will be awful. And I have not had an awful pregnancy, and I think, yeah, part of that might be down to some good luck. But I do think a lot of it is down to looking after yourself. I have looked after me. I have looked after my baby, before it's here, it's still here, and I have eaten well and exercised well and continue to move well. And I think if you follow the advice I have given throughout this series, and keep yourself strong and mobile, listen to your body, work with your body, and then certainly in this last couple of months and final month, the videos coming up beyond this, so we're week 33 onwards, following some of the birth preparation routines that I'll be showing you through, and also talking about specific nutrition for the last month, and ways to get your partner involved as well. I think if you follow all of that, you do have a much better chance of having a good pregnancy. I can honestly say, hand on heart, I have not felt any different through my pregnancy, other than very recently just feeling heavier. I can feel a bearing down. My baby is head down now from my last midwife appointment. So yeah, but other than that, I felt fine. Everything's good because I've taken care and I've informed myself and educated myself, not just reading crappy books about what to expect when you're expecting. Now, I'm not knocking that particular title. There are some benefits to just knowing the basics week by week. I think it's interesting and informative to know that your baby is the size of a date or a pear or a melon or whatever they like to do, and to know what stage of development the baby's at before it's born. But it doesn't really actually tell you much about pregnancy itself and how really to look after yourself, and certainly doesn't really do any proper birth preparation. And I mean, all the pregnancy books that I've glanced at, the kind of standard texts that most first-time mums read, they do have a section on nutrition and exercise, but they are really a bit backward, if I'm honest. And the things that I have found most useful are reading proper birthing books written by midwives, and yes, they have got a heavy focus on people who want a natural, non-interventional type of birth, and I appreciate that doesn't always happen. But I think if you actually go into it understanding that your body can do it, if you are lucky enough to be able to conceive a child, your body has an innate ability to give birth. So if the sooner you trust that and stop thinking too medically, then the better. So yeah, to come back to kind of the main point of this video, it's just that I've had so many people kind of say things to me like, oh, well, that will never be the same again. And just today I was at the solicitors because I've gone to update our wills to recognise our unborn child, and my husband and I were sitting there, and the lady on reception said, oh, it's very good that you're sorting your wills now. She said, you both look so fresh-faced. She said, look at each other now and remember that image of each other, because you're not going to look like that for much longer. You'll be grey and frazzled, and she was obviously half joking and being nice, but people do like to tell you that when you're pregnant with your first child. And yeah, I get there's a bit of a joke to it, but there, a lot of people really do believe the truth in it. And of course, I'm going into this expecting my body to be different, and I'm expecting my life to be different. Otherwise, there wouldn't really be much point. There is a whole change that we are hoping to have. But I just think that people like to kind of doom monger. They like to say, oh, you're pregnant. Oh, how are you feeling? Oh, have you been sick every day? And, oh, are you ready for how awful your birth is going to be? And yeah, you're never going to sleep again. People like to kind of make you feel bad. They like to tell you horrible birth stories. They like to tell you about their child that never slept for 8 years. And yeah, these things can happen. Of course they can. And I have a horrible sneaky suspicion that my child isn't going to be a great sleeper. Just got an inkling. But, people just like to make you feel bad. And I think that's a real shame. And I want people to know that pregnancy does not have to be horrible. I am 7.5 months through mine, and it's been great. As I said, I honestly have not felt any different to normal other than getting a lot bigger, and only bigger here. Nothing else on me is bigger. That's the other thing. Because I've been sensible, I haven't gained a ton of weight. So pregnancy has been great. Even if I suddenly get a bit achy and tired in these last couple of weeks, come on, I've had 7.5 months of feeling good. So pregnancy does not have to be awful. Birth itself, now I am hardly saying that I don't expect to have any pain. I am expecting it to be pain, but I don't think it's fair to say to people birth is a horrible experience. And yet I get that some people have had horrible birth experiences, of course. And if you're watching this and you have, then I'm really sorry to hear that. But a lot of people have really great positive birth experiences. Some people do claim to have had pain-free births. I do genuinely believe they're in the minority, but they can happen. As I say, I'm not going into this expecting it to be pain-free. I'm expecting it to be very intense. I am expecting there to be pain with a purpose, but I don't want it to be a horrible experience. It should be a really empowering, yes, cheesy word, I know, but it should be a great experience. Giving birth to another human being is something that women are generally designed to do. So, I think it's a real shame to just assume it's going to be horrible. And I get that sometimes things genuinely do go wrong. Sometimes there are actual medical reasons that make it very difficult for people to have a good birth. And I'm not knocking that, and I think it's wonderful that we have such a good medical system that can help with situations where go back a few decades and certainly centuries, and mothers were dying regularly in childbirth, whereas now we have a system that means we can avoid that. But we've almost got overly medicalised, and people's opinions of birth are based on all the horror stories their friends have told them, and on what most of us know, which is stuff we've seen in films and TV programs. People screaming, lying on their backs, giving birth in a completely unnatural position. And because we've got such a medical way of life now, it's kind of just seen to be a medical thing. And I genuinely don't believe that birth is medical. Yes, there are times when it needs to be, and it's wonderful that we have fantastic obstetricians and people who can help and save babies' lives and save mums' lives. But a lot of the time, we kind of assume we need to go to a hospital, and we assume we need all these drugs because that's just what we've been told we need. And actually, within the medical system, they are pushing against certain time limits. They don't want people to be hanging around for a while, so they'll hurry things along, and you do get what I call the cascade of interventions. And I'll go into that in more detail in a later video or maybe in a written blog post. But the bottom line is, if you are told you have to be induced because you've reached a certain magic number, which means the baby must have to come out, if you have an induction, often the contractions are much more painful, so you're much more likely to have some form of pain relief. And if you end up taking an epidural, you are much less likely to be able to birth in a natural position because you're numb, essentially. So you're much more likely to be on your back, which will slow down your labour. And then the chances of having a C-section are much higher. And actually that potentially could have been avoided. And there's a whole host of, I say, reasons for not wanting these things in an ideal world, which I will go into separately. But birth does not have to be awful. It can be a very positive, albeit, undoubtedly slightly painful experience. And then as for pregnancy ruining your body, I think, it's unrealistic for people to want to assume and to want to look like they did before afterwards, because you have grown and nurtured a human being inside of you. So you should expect to have a few stripes that you've earned, as it were, whether they're in the form of stretch marks or slightly saggy skin or whatever. But also, it's just worth pointing out that, you know, your body doesn't have to be ruined. And so many people do suffer with pelvic floor issues after birth. And because so many people do, people can normalize it and just laugh it off. And actually, the truth is, if you take care of yourself during pregnancy, if you have a good birth, and again, go into this in more detail, that minimizes the risk of damage to the pelvic floor, and if you know how to heal yourself afterwards, actually, it's not good or normal to be leaking urine after having a baby, or 2 babies or 3 babies or more, just because it's common. And there is a difference, and there are things you can do to help, as I say, before, during and after birth. So I just want to make it clear, if you're watching this, especially if it's your first child, please don't let people get you down talking about how awful the whole process is. You know, it should be a wonderful process. And as I say, it's not without its slightly unglamorous parts, and it certainly isn't pain-free when it comes to the birth itself in most cases, but it's not there to ruin you. It's not all over. You don't have to just throw in the towel and stuff yourself with rubbish food. In fact, that's the worst thing you can do. It's not fair on your child. You know, they are dependent on you at this stage, so you should be looking after them. So yeah, just it's a bit of a rant maybe. As I say, lots of people have said things to me and I have to bite my tongue a lot. And I know not everybody watching this will agree with me, and that's fine. But if you do agree with me and you like what I'm saying, as I say, there'll be more on this and I will write about it in more depth. And you would also then potentially be a very good fit for working with me, either in some of my pregnancy classes or postnatal or one-to-one, because, you know, we really want to encourage women to understand how the process works and really prepare you for the most lovely birth you can have. And to make sure that you're fit and functional and happy beyond that, to look after your child. So thank you for listening. And this is not meant to offend anybody. As I say, there are sometimes very good reasons why things aren't great, but I think that too many people assume that it's all doom and gloom when it doesn't have to be. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Thank you for listening, and I will see you next week. Bye.